Right, hello. So today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite philosophers, and that philosopher is called Spinoza. Now he's known by two names, Baruch Spinoza, and also Benedict de Spinoza. Um, Now he was a Jewish man, and his family were descended from Portugal, but had moved to the Netherlands to escape the persecution of Jewish people that had been taking place in Spain and Portugal under the reigns of Ferdinand and Isabella at the at the end of the 15th century, which continued and was known as the Spanish Inquisition, and continued into the 16th century. And basically, one of the main targets of the Spanish Inquisition was Jewish people, and not only Jewish people who practiced Judaism, but also Jewish people who had converted to Christianity. Ferdinand and Isabella believed that a lot of these people who had converted to Christianity from Judaism were not to be trusted and were not proper Christians, and so they were tortured and killed and treated absolutely terribly by the Spanish Inquisition. And also remember that Spain during this time was a great empire, and had also temporarily joined with Portugal, and the Portuguese were also persecuting Jewish people as well. So Spinoza's family had migrated to escape this persecution, and that's why he's got the sort of Portuguese name, even though he lives in the Netherlands. So Spinoza is in the 17th century, and during the 17th century in the Netherlands, the Dutch had been fighting for their independence from the Spanish, and had gone through a very strong Reformation, where the Catholic Church really didn't have much authority, and people were Protestants, and there were lots of different groups of Protestants. And in the Netherlands, there was quite a lot of religious and religious and intellectual freedom, more freedom than there was in a lot of other countries in Europe. So you could sort of say what you liked to a greater extent there than you could in France or Spain or even England. So Spinoza was able to take advantage of this situation to really be honest in his philosophy, to say what he really believed and to write it down. And for these reasons, Spinoza is considered part of the Enlightenment and one of the sort of early Enlightenment thinkers, because we think about the Enlightenment as being an 18th century thing, whereas Spinoza was in the 17th century. A really great book about Spinoza and other thinkers of his time is by a guy called Jonathan Israel, I think. I'll put it in on the screen. And it's called Radical Enlightenment. And it's a huge book, but it's extremely well researched, and really covers the intellectual history of the 17th century, and how important and radical these thinkers were. Spinoza wrote sort of two types of philosophy. One of the types of philosophy that he wrote was a kind of was a kind of political and social philosophy where he wrote about government and about men and women and about freedoms and rights and things like that. And it was sort of a book that talked about politics quite a lot. And the second sort of philosophy that he wrote was more of what you would consider to be pure philosophy, and it was about the world and what the world is and how the world works, and about God and the soul and stuff like that. um, and Spinoza was kind of persecuted by religious people, other Jews especially, who really didn't like that he had these radical ideas, because his ideas conflicted with the belief systems of most religious people at the time. A lot of people would consider Spinoza to have been an atheist, which is someone who doesn't believe in God or thinks God doesn't exist. Other people think that Spinoza was a theist and believed in God, but that the God he believed in was just a bit sort of different from the God that you have in Christianity or Judaism or Islam or many of the other religions. Spinoza didn't call himself an atheist. He called himself a theist and or a deist. Now there's some slight difference between those two terms, but we'll come back to that later. So what I really want to focus on today is not the political stuff. Basically, the political stuff, he had very progressive views, and he thought that we should have republic and we should have democracy and we should have rights for people to vote in elections, and he thought that women should be better treated and should have equality with men, and basically all the similar kinds of views to sort of liberalism and views about freedom and making people doing away with all the sort of dogma of the church and the state and the monarchies, and having a more free society where people can do and say whatever they like and choose their own governments and stuff like that. So he's very, very progressive, but don't really want to say too much about that really, apart from that it was radical, and especially radical for the time he lived in. And he definitely wouldn't have got away with saying those things if he lived in France, for example. But anyway, he was not a philosopher as in like a professional philosopher who spent all his time writing philosophy. He had a daytime job, which was something to do with glass making or some shit like that. It was a physical job where he had to use his hands and stuff and work in a shop and make things. So he was a working man. Everybody said he was a nice fellow as well. He was sort of spoken of very well and very highly. And everyone said he was a fucking nice guy. And if you look at his portrait, he looks like a nice fellow in the picture. Right. So he kind of turned his back on his religious beliefs and created his own belief system, which was a philosophical one. Now, during the time of Spinoza, in philosophy, there are two sort of types of idea that are very popular, and one of them is called rationalism. And rationalism is the idea that people, their brains and their minds, rather, people's minds are already sort of fully developed already when you're born, kind of, and that knowledge and understanding is something that everybody has already in their minds, and that you can sort of learn and understand the world or the universe by thinking and by introspection, by just using what's already in your mind to sort of rationalize out a system of the world and to understand the world better. Now, if you think about mathematics, now mathematics is an example of this kind of thing, because everything that's in mathematics is true, and it doesn't depend on learning something that happens externally in the world. Mathematics is logically and rationally true, and 1 + 1 = 2 is always true, and it exists in the mind. It's a rational thing. There's nothing that could happen in life that could make it so that 1 + 1 = something else. And rationalism kind of emphasizes the extent to which reason and sort of logic and things that don't require learning something new by seeing something or hearing something that comes from outside you, it emphasizes how much the understanding is something that comes from you practicing using your mind and practicing rational thought and sort of being clever by being logical and rational, that kind of thing. Whereas the other type of philosophy is empiricism, and empiricism is the idea that your brain, your mind, and your system of thought is like there's nothing there. It's completely blank, like a piece of paper, and that when you the only way to get understanding or knowledge of anything in the world or the universe is to learn it, or for something to happen to you, like for you to see something, or you to hear something, or you to be told something, or to read something, or whatever. And knowledge is something that comes to you from outside, if that makes any sense. So rationalists like Spinoza, and also Leibniz and René Descartes, they think that you've got all the stuff you need already in your mind to figure out a system of how the world or the universe works by being rational and logical, and that you can figure out the philosophical system of the universe through the materials that you already have at your disposal in your intellect. Whereas the empiricists believe that that's a load of bollocks, and that you have to have something happen to you that you discover or that you learn from outside of yourself by experience. And the empiricists, the people who write about things and believe in empiricism, include John Locke, the same guy that wrote about the political freedom, but he's also a philosopher of this empiricism. David Hume and George Berkeley. We have to look at Spinoza as a rationalist, if you're going to use that dichotomy, rationalism and empiricism. So Spinoza's famous book is called The Ethics. Now, ethics means morality, and ethics means doing the thing that's right and not the thing that's wrong. So when you see the title Ethics, you imagine that this is going to be a book about what's right and what's wrong, and what you should do and what you shouldn't do, and what's good and what's bad, and that kind of thing. But the ethics isn't really about those things at all. Well, not really, a little bit, but that's not really the point of it. So it's a strange title. Now, in this book, The Ethics, Spinoza wants to try to prove that God exists, and he thinks that you can prove that God exists by thinking. And basically, his idea of God is that God is the universe and God is the world, and that the God is the only thing that understands the world and understands the universe and everything about it and how it works. So the universe or the world, which world and universe kind of mean the same thing for philosophers. When they say world, they mean universe. They don't mean the planet Earth. They mean the universe. Everything that there is the world. Or so in all these philosophy lectures, I'm going to refer to the world meaning everything that there is, not just on the planet Earth, but in space and everything, everywhere as the world. Just so you don't get confused, I'm not talking about the planet Earth or whatever. So the world exists. Now, people have only an inadequate understanding of the world. They don't really know what it's all about. They haven't got the full picture of the world. Their vision, their view of the world, their understanding of the world is limited in various ways. Now, you could say that yeah, you don't know about the world fully because you haven't seen everything in the world. Science is only so far advanced that we don't know everything and why everything is the way it is, and maybe that you don't know everything about the world because you don't do fuck all and you just sit at home wanking all day and you never learn anything, so you don't know fuck all about the world. Whereas, but because Spinoza is a rationalist and not an empiricist, he doesn't think that the reason you don't know about the world is because you sit at home wanking. He thinks the reason is because you're not thinking properly. And if you think properly, then you can understand the world and how it works and everything about it. Or at least you can increase your understanding of the world by thinking properly. And for Spinoza, it's fucked up thinking that stops you from understanding the world. Now, Spinoza thinks that God is basically the world, and the world and God are kind of the same thing, because the only thing or person the only mind that could understand everything in the world and understand what the world's all about and how it works completely would be the world itself, or the world's mind. So this sort of world itself and the world's mind, or the world's intellect, and the world itself are kind of the same thing, and that is God. So his definition of God is basically like the full understanding of everything in the world and what exists and how it works and everything about it, and the full knowledge and the full understanding of everything that fucking is or ever could be. That is what God is. So there's only one God, because there's only one full understanding of all of that and what it means and what it is. And so that's God. God is definitely exists because he has to, because the world exists and everything exists and everything is sort of connected together in this huge sort of web of existence, when everything linked together, and that's God. And no cunt actually has a full understanding of God, so no cunt is God apart from God himself, who is not like a person, but is actually the sort of the full everything that there is. But no fucker has sort of access to the full database of what there is, or the mind of God, the full everything. We've only got bits and pieces. Now, because this God also is the world and is everything in the world, then we are all kind of like little bits of God, or rather our minds, our intellects are bits of God, when you consider God as the intellectual understanding of the world. So I'm just some random cunt, but I have a little bit of understanding of the world and a little bit of knowledge of the world, because I'm a little bit of the world myself, but I'm not God, so I don't know everything and I'm not everything. I'm just a bit of God and a bit of the everything that there is, and so are you, and so is every cunt in the world. And there isn't one cunt or one group of cunts who knows everything and is God. Um, you know, there's no one bloke who can be God, or no cat that can be God, or anything else. There's God is everything that there is, all together. You know, we're just little tiny bits of that. So we're all just little bits of God, and we're all sort of, our understanding of the world is very limited and a bit fucked up. So that's sort of the first main big thing, that the world is to be understood as everything that there is, that it exists, and God is the world, and is also the potential of a full, complete understanding of the world, and knowing everything that there is about the world, and knowing the whole world, and having the full picture of everything. And none of us have that, because we're just little bits of the whole thing, and we only get little fucked up bits of the world, and so we're really limited. But Spinoza believes that we can develop ourselves to be closer to God by increasing our understanding of the world and how it works, and how it ticks. And God and the world the kind of world that Spinoza thinks exists is a mechanical world that works kind of a bit like a clock, or a machine, in that everything is sort of these parts that go together and click in a particular way. It's not something that's subject to random changes and it's all over the place. It's a full machine, and you can sort of learn how the machine works to some extent by seeing how the machine goes, and what things connect to what, and what makes what happen. So you know, some people understand how a car works, and some people don't, and some people understand the mechanisms that of the human body, you know, and how the human body works, and some people don't. Well, for Spinoza, the world itself and God is a bit like the human body, or is a bit like a car engine, or is a bit like a clock, in that it works a certain way, and that means that you can sort of understand it if you can sort of learn how it works. And because we're all parts of it, we are bits of it, like we are material. We are bits of the world, as in we are flesh and blood and whatnot, and part of the organic structure of the universe. But on the other hand, we have minds as well, and our minds are capable of understanding what the fuck we are and what the fuck we're doing in the world. So if you look at a car engine, and the bits that go in a car engine, they work, but they don't have an understanding of why they work or what the fuck they're doing. You know, they're just materials. They're just you know, they're just thoughtless, mindless bits of metal and gas and whatever substance. Whereas a person, a human being especially, is capable of understanding stuff about himself and why he's doing it. You know, so you know that you're hungry and that you've got to eat something, and you know that you're gonna have a wank, or you know that you're gonna want to have sex and have a child, and you know that you're gonna die, or you know that if you brush your teeth then they'll be healthier, and you know that you need to go to sleep and whatever. So we know certain things about ourselves and how we work to some extent in the world. Now, there's also the concept of happiness and pleasure as well, which is important, because being happy and sort of being all right, or being comfortable in the world is important. You know, not being fucking miserable all the time, and not being pissed off, and not being in pain or stress all the time that's important for people. And Spinoza kind of talks about this a little bit, but it's not the main point. But Spinoza thinks that you're going to be sort of happier, and you're going to be sort of feel better about the world and your place in it if you understand how the world fucking works, or at least how you work in the world and what your place is in it and how you fucking work, and how the world and you as a part of the world all sort of fits together in the way that if like and like because a piece of a car, and a car's engine, or you know, or I don't know much about cars, or a gear stick or whatever in a car isn't bothered by being a gear stick in a car. It's not bothered by being what it is because it doesn't have a fucking mind or a soul. So there's no question of it being in shit because of what it is. Whereas human beings are sort of fucking annoyed and pissed off and in the shit and suffer because of being what they are, you know, being human, or being me, or being some other cunt, or you know, they get all kinds of ways you get pissed off, or you get hurt, or you get upset, or you get depressed, or you know, sometimes things make you happy, or whatever. Now Spinoza thinks that if you can understand why you get pissed off, and why some things make you happy, and why you feel this way when this happens, or you feel that way when that happens, or why you do this thing and why you do that thing, or why when this happens you do that, or when that happens you do this. You know, if you know why you scream every time you see a spider, then you'll be less likely to be so fucked up when you see a spider, because you'll understand that it's not really going to hurt you, but the reason why you're scared of it is because it's genetically engineered in the mind that spiders are dangerous, because in the past people lived with dangerous spiders, and spiders were a dangerous thing. So we sort of have that in us to be scared of spiders, and we can't change that. But knowing that there's a reason for it, and that's what the reason is, means that we aren't so fucked up, and we're not so pissed off when that happens, because understanding it makes it better. So sort of being confused and not understanding things adds to the stress of the situation. And you know, if you have a dog and you just kick it and hit it for no reason, then it's going to be very stressed, and because it doesn't understand why it's being hit or kicked. You know, it's part of the thing is just not understanding why. And so understanding why things happen and how things happen is good for a person. Now, because God is the full understanding of everything that there is, and how it works, then the more you understand about why things happen and how things happen and how stuff works, the closer you are to God, and sort of like God's little bits, the little bits of God start to understand themselves more, and how they work. If you consider that we're all little bits of God, and we're understanding why we do things and how we work, then we're kind of more comfortable being those little bits of God, and happier being those little bits of God, and we're not so stressed out, and we don't sort of think the world is sort of random stuff happening to us. We see that there's a meaning for everything, and that there's a reason for everything, which is sort of when people believe in God, religious people, they often see that there's a reason for everything and a logic behind everything, but we just don't know it yet. And believing in God is often believing in that there's a reason for things, you know. And a lot of religious people believe that you know, God has a system of morality where if you're bad you go to hell, if you're good you go to heaven, and stuff like that. Now Spinoza doesn't really believe in those things, but he does believe in that reasons and understanding reasons is important, and reasons. But there we have to go to the next point, which is that Spinoza believes that the whole world, the whole universe, is like a machine, and that everything that happens in the world is connected and must happen that way. And he believes in causality, which means that X makes B happen, and B makes C happen, and C makes D happen. And he believes in something called determinism. Now, determinism means that everything has already been decided how it's going to happen just from the beginning, like a clock. If you're the small hand of a clock, you're going to go around and every minute one notch on the on one. You're going to move one bit every minute. Every minute you're going to move. And the reason why you're going to do that isn't because you want to, or because someone's asked you to, or because you just randomly. It's because it's part of the machine, and it's made to do that because of the mechanics of the machine. And determinists believe that everything in the world is like that. So there's a reason behind everything, and that reason means that that thing isn't random, and it could never have happened differently, or that it can't be changed or couldn't be changed. It was always going to happen like that. So everything that happens in the world happens because of something else that makes it happen. So if uh, you don't have free will, in that you can't just sort of decide what you want to do, like you have complete control over what you're going to do, because what you decide to do, what you say you're going to do, what you want to do, that's created by something else. So we're not the full masters of ourselves. We don't control what we do and what things happen. We're just all parts of the machine, and we all work the way that other parts of the machine make us work, and then we make other parts of the machine work that way. So we're not sort of autonomous. We're not like islands that do what we want or think what we want. Everything that we do and think, and everything that we are, is made to be that way by something else, and something else by something else, and that the world is this big giant machine where we're all everything we do is determined already, and has to be that way. So we don't really have sort of freedom in the sense that we're completely separate from everything else, and we just can just randomly have thoughts and opinions, or desires or wishes. All the desires and wishes and thoughts and opinions that we have are determined by something else in the machine. Now, that might be a depressing thought for some people, because they think, well, how am I responsible for what I do? Or how can I say that I'm a good person if everything that I do and everything that I am is made that way by something else, and how can I say that I've done something, or I've created something, if it's not me necessarily that's doing it, but it's something else that's making me do it, or making me be this way. That Spinoza thinks doesn't have to be a depressing thought, but basically free will is kind of a lot of bollocks, because the idea of free will, you don't really know what you're wanting free will to be. Are you saying that you want to just do what you want, or are you saying that you want to want what you want to want? It's a bit weird. So the idea of determinism isn't that you don't get to do what you want, but it's the idea that what you want is determined by something else. So it's a determinist world where everything is organized already and determined to be this way, and everything's like a big machine, and we are little bits of the machine, but don't fully understand what the fuck we're doing in the machine, or what the fuck we are, or what the fuck is the point of us in the machine, or the things that we see or do in the machine, what the fucking point of it is. And we are affected by the machine in certain ways, and made to behave and do things in certain ways by the way the machine functions. So but the problem is, for Spinoza, that we don't understand, and it's our lack of understanding that makes us have problems and be fucked up and be shit. and not be sort of happy as being part of this machine, because we have minds and we have consciousness, and we're not just random. We're not the same as a piece of a car, in the sense that the car doesn't have the problems of understanding or self-conscious or consciousness that we have. Even though we are still, physically, we are just the same kind of thing as a part of a car, but we have to understand what the fuck we're doing, why we are like that, and what part of the car we are, and how we work. Anyway, so uh, the one of the main parts of Spinoza's ethics is a chapter about the effects. The effects means the way that we are affected by life and controlled by life, and how it affects us sort of mentally, psychologically. And what this means is that we are made to feel certain ways by things that happen to us, and by things that we do, or things that happen in life. And it's kind of a psychological thesis in the book, where he talks about what makes us happy, what makes us sad, and he goes through a list of all these different various feelings and thoughts that people have, and he explains them and how they exist and what they're for and what function they serve in the system of the world. So, for example, he says jealousy is a feeling that you have when you want something that somebody else has, and you don't have it yourself, and you feel bad because that person has the thing that you don't have, and you want it yourself, but you don't have it. Or it says, hatred is a feeling of sadness that is accompanied with the thought of another person or thing that makes you sad or makes you unhappy. Pride is a feeling of happiness connected with the idea of something that you have done. Shame is a feeling of sadness or misery, which is connected with a feeling that you have that you've done something bad and you fucked up. Fear is a feeling of sadness or a bad feeling that you have that's connected with the thought of something that will happen in the future, or might happen in the future, and you're scared of it. Excitement is the feeling of happiness, or a good feeling that's connected with the thought of something that's going to happen in the future that's going to be good, etc., etc. And he goes through all these things, and he says that some of them, that these are ways that the machine has to affect you and make you work as part of the machine by sort of making you feel pleasure and pain. And it's kind of like if you're a slave and you've got somebody with a whip or a big stick who's hitting you or whipping you when you do something they don't like, or to make you do something that they want you to do. And these effects, these feelings of sorrow and misery, fear, regret, and all that, these are sort of like the whip or the stick. They make you do things, make you change your ways, make you behave in different ways because it hurts, or because it gives you pleasure, when you feel guilty or you feel proud or whatever. So because you feel guilty about having done this thing, then you won't want to do it again, because you don't want to have that feeling again. And because helping other people or doing something good make you feel proud, then that will make you want to do that good thing again. The world uses these manipulations of your feelings, makes you sort of hurts you with regrets, and hurts you with fears, and hurts you with sadnesses and of different types, in order to force you to behave in the way that the world makes the world work better. but like pain, for example, is a good one. If you cut your finger, then it hurts, and that that's something wrong, and that you shouldn't be cutting your finger. And There are people in the world who don't feel pain, and they often get hurt and die because they don't know that there's something wrong with them. So anyway, the world has this way of this psychological aspect to it, which is people being sort of forced to work by pain and pleasure in various ways, which is the effects, which is things like jealousy, which is things like fear and pride and so on. But these things are kind of weird because you're kind of like an animal when you're being run by just avoidance of pain and pursuit of pleasure in these various ways. You're just being sort of pulled and pushed along by the world and by life, and being sort of controlled and being pushed around, and you're not really understanding why things work the way they are. Because if you're the slave and you're, for example, building a house, then it's better to understand that the house needs to be built, and that you don't need to be whipped with the whip to do the thing that's necessary. You can just understand that the house needs to be built, and that you're a part of what's going to make this house built. It's a bad analogy, but basically you're affected by all these things psychologically, and you're like subject, and you're just having shit done to you by the world. Something's happened and now you're pissed off, and something happened and now you're happy, and something happened and now you're annoyed, and something happened and now you're upset, and you're just like being subjected to the world, and the world is just something that's happening to you and sort of playing with you like a toy. And that's how it feels when you don't understand why the world works the way it does. So you're pissed off one day and you're happy the next, and so on. And you're like an animal, you're just being whipped and kicked or fed randomly, and you don't understand the system of why things are happening. And if you can understand the system of why things are happening and how things work, then you don't necessarily need to have all these bad feelings, because you just know that that's the way the world is, and you can sort of chill out, and you can sort of understand that your girlfriend finished with you because she likes this other guy, rather than just sort of feeling pain because your girlfriend left you. Or you can just understand that your grandfather died because everybody dies, and that's the way of the world, rather than just being shocked and hurt by the fact that you're not going to see him anymore. Or you can understand the way the world works better, and that makes you sort of feel better, and you can sort of be more rational, and you can rationalize yourself out of just being manipulated psychologically by the world, and understand the way the world works sort of as a machine. And if you understand that it's a machine, and you're part of the machine, and the machine works in a certain way, then you can be comfortable and be content with being a part of a world that works in a certain way, without just sort of being randomly hurt by the world because you don't understand the system. If you understand what I mean. So that and the more you understand the world and how it works, the less likely you are to be hurt randomly and feel bad and feel all these sensations of misery on account of the world affecting you in certain ways. And you're not going to be a slave to the world in the sense of not understanding it. But if you increase your understanding of the world, then you become free, because you understand the world better, and understanding the world better and how it works is what freedom is. And slavery and being unfree is not understanding how the world works. So if you know why things are happening, you can't change the way the world works, but you can understand it better. And understanding the world better is freedom, and not understanding the world is not being free and is being a slave. And there are all kinds of advantages, psychological advantages, to understanding the world better and being free. and you'll feel more free if you understand the world better. So if you think of a baby, who doesn't know what the fuck's going on, and you think about an adult who understands the world better, and you see which one's crying all the time, which one isn't, right? Now, God is the full understanding of everything, and in the mind of the universe, and the universe is the full thing working, and God is the full thing working, and the full understanding of it. We're all just little bits of God doing our own little things as part of the big machine. But the more we understand the way we work as bits of that machine and the way that the machine works, then the closer we get to God, because we become sort of God is there, the full thing is there, but we only have sort of access to a little bit of it. But we can increase our understanding, and the more we increase our understanding, the sort of bigger bit of God we become. And God is the full understanding of everything in the world, and we're all little bits of God. But the more we understand of the world, how it works, the more godly we are, and we become sort of like bigger bits of God. And in terms of like love is a part of understanding, because the whole world loves itself, and it works for itself, and love is a part of what makes the world work, and sort of good feelings and positive things are parts of what go with the world working well, and sort of negative feelings and bad things are parts that go with the world having problems, so he talks about the intellectual love of God, and the love with which, the infinite love with which God loves himself, and freedom, and all these things are kind of the same thing. It's all about increasing the understanding of God by being more of God, being a bigger bit of God, by understanding more of the world. Now, Spinoza sort of thinks that you can do this to a large extent by thinking properly, and by rationalizing, and by using the tools in your head logically to discover the way the world works, and to understand it better, and to be a bigger part of God. Now, the empiricists would argue with that and say, well, that doesn't make sense, because you have to learn things. But the world that Spinoza thinks exists is not a world where there are physical things and there are mental things. It's a world where the world is one thing, and it is both physical and mental at the same time, and that he doesn't sort of see the world in terms of there being external things that happen outside of you that your mind doesn't have access to. He sees the world as one big machine, which is both physical and mental at the same time, and we have our bits of it, and we are both physical and mental, and we understand God, who is both physical and mental, / the universe, and God, which is the same thing, which is physical and mental. But when we say God, we're sort of thinking about the world as mental. When we say the universe, we're thinking of it as physical, but God and the world are both the same thing, and this thing that the world is both physical and mental. So basically, what should we do? We should think more. We should act. We should be rational. We should stop getting upset about things and being emotional, and sort of being affected by things emotionally and stuff. And we should be more sort of logical, and we should consider the world, how it works as a machine, rather than sort of reacting to things that happen to us by getting upset or getting pissed off. And if we all do that, then the world will be a better place, and we'll all be happier in the world, and people will be better people, because they will be acting in the way which is consistent with how the world makes the world better, rather than acting in ways that will be just based on sort of random feelings. Even though nothing is actually random in real life, but things appear to be random because we don't understand the world properly. Because we don't understand the world properly, things appear to be random. Now, a lot of people who talk about freedom, they don't like the idea of the world being a machine, or things being determined, because they like to think of freedom as a personal thing, as a thing that is not subject to causes or being controlled by something else. But Spinoza doesn't see that as a problem. In fact, he thinks, what the fuck are you talking about when you talk about freedom? Are you talking about that you're just randomness? Just randomness? Is that what you mean by freedom? Randomness? And he says, well, randomness is bad. Randomness is basically is ignorance. Randomness is people just thinking things are random because they don't understand why they happened and how they happened. And if you understand how things happen, why they happen that way, then you are more free because you understand better and you are less affected by it. Whereas if the world and things happen to you just seem to happen in a random way, it's not like you're doing it and you're making it happen. It's just like something else or someone else is doing it to you, and you don't understand where it's coming from or how it's happening. So you're just fucked, you know. So the world and the universe and God and everything that exists has a system. That system is mechanical. It's determined. You can't change it, but you can understand it better. And that's what we should do to be better people and to have a better world, is to increase our understanding. And that's basically Spinoza. I hope it wasn't